Barnstable this morning. I'm Sarah Colvin, and joining me live on the phone, I welcome Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Wendy Northcross. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning, Sarah.
How are you today?
I'm freezing.
It is cold out there, isn't it?
I know. I guess it's time for that, but it's always a shock to the system, you know?
It really is. That's what we said this morning. Well, I guess winter is finally here. I know we've had a snow, but we haven't had this bitter cold. And I take my dogs out at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was telling them, hurry up, guys, it is cold out here.
I know. Well, you know, it's the time of year, and if we don't get the cold, then certain bugs don't die, and that's not good for the trees. And, you know, this is a reason for the seasons, and it's welcomed.
It
but
is.
It's just a shock to the system nonetheless.
Makes us appreciate the warm summer days much more, doesn't it?
They're coming.
Indeed. Well, we can talk a little bit about preparing for the summer season in a minute, but first I wanted to talk, of course, about a pretty serious issue, and I think that this really the conversation has been thrusted into the forefront with the HBO documentary, and certainly we're dealing with some issues surrounding opiate abuse here on Cape Cod. So talk to me a little, Wendy, about, you know, the Chamber's involvement with the issue and your position on some of the topics that have been coming up for discussion in recent days.
Sure. I mean, it has been a very difficult issue that has really reached the level of community-wide involvement. I will tell you that, quite point blank, it didn't take HBO to tell us that we had a problem, and it didn't take HBO to point out that Cape Cod, while it's seemingly the place that everyone has their perfect vacation or their perfect retirement, it is nonetheless a very real place, and that Cape Cod is not immune to the problems of the world. And certainly we don't exceed numbers of abuse compared to other communities in our state or even across the nation. Today, in the United States, more people die from an opiate abuse overdose than they do in a car accident. So it's across the nation. It's not just Cape Cod. So, but of course, when you have that kind of national exposure with the name Cape Cod USA in the movie title, it brings some attention, wanted and unwanted. So, quite honestly, our board of directors had been grappling with issues within their own workplace and had brought that to the board table at the Cape Cod Chamber and said, gee, what can we, as a business organization, as a community development organization, what can we do?
Absolutely, and so what are some of those responses? You know, what were some of the solutions that you come up with in terms of what can the chamber do?
Well, you know, that's the hard thing, and partly because I'm thinking, gosh, you know, this is something I really know nothing about. We've been very fortunate here at the Chamber with you know, no problems within our own work family. I don't have that within my own personal family, although, you know, we've got health issues. But this is a very specific topic, and substance abuse, especially with opiates, which is, you know, it's a smaller percentage on the Cape than alcohol. But with opiate abuse, it leads to death. You know, it leads to a certain death with heroin, and unless there are interventions that can be made. So the first thing we thought we needed to do was get educated, you know, as an organization, and try to educate our members, because maybe some people were grappling with this at work and didn't realize it, you know, had perhaps issues with employees but didn't know what the root cause was. So over a year and a half ago, we established a task force. We asked Judy Scarafile, who's on our board of directors, really representing the Cape Cod Baseball League, but she's a pharmacist by training and by trade. And we asked Judy if she would be the liaison for the Chamber to other groups that are working on this too, because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but we wanted to be helpful. So we created a task force. We developed some workshops last year. Gosnold actually led many of those workshops for employers. We're working now with Cape Cod Community College, has a division that does corporate training and professional development training. They are bringing us some curriculum for the spring for more workshops for employers, a two-part workshop. And then, you know, Judy has been very active on the Regional Substance Abuse Council that the county pulled together. The county pulled this together about 2 years, right about the same time that we were getting active too. So I think about 2 years ago is when it really hit a tipping point on Cape Cod.
Now, I know that, obviously, we focus on our area here on Cape Cod, but I know that certainly this is, as we just talked about, this is a problem that permeates the region, the state, and then the nation. And certainly other, vacation destinations, other tourist destinations are not immune to this either. So have you had conversations at all with leaders in other tourist destinations, other areas of the country that might be dealing with a similar problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, it appears that being a tourism destination really doesn't have anything to do with it. What we're finding is the people that become substance abusers really come from all walks of life. They come from good families. They come from poor families. They come from families that work in travel and tourism. They come from families that work in healthcare. They come from families that are very well off. They come from families that don't exist. There really is no family structure. So there's really no one thread that you can unravel that points to, aha, it's because you have kind of a seasonal peaks and valleys in your economy, and that might drive people to do something. The thing that we're learning is that in some cases it comes from a lack of education on the parents' part. It comes from kids that got injured in sports or in a car accident and were prescribed drugs that they then got hooked on and started to look for alternatives that were cheaper, which led them to heroin. So there's a whole lot of root causes. I will tell you that I was at I sit on the board of an association of chamber execs, and the purpose of that is to do, like you said, best practices sharing, professional development for people that run chambers of commerce as a profession. We went around the table back in, I think it was late October, and had like 1 minute to talk about what was going on in our community, what we were working on. And by the time they got to me there was 50 people at the table. By the time they got to me, I wanted to say something that was different than what a lot of people had said, because there were people nodding their heads, oh yes, we're working on that. Well, I was the only one to say, we've formed a task force that we're looking at how we can help curb opiate abuse in our community. Well, all the heads started shaking. All of them acknowledged, oh my gosh, that's an issue in our community too. Good for you for being proactive on that. Because I think as business organizations, sometimes we don't know what we can do. So some of the things they've been asking us, like, well, what are you doing? How are you approaching it? And I'm saying things like, well, we're kind of looking at it through a business lens of helping the employer, but also we have a lot of small businesses. So if you want to point to anything that's part of Cape Cod's challenges, we have a lot of small businesses. We don't have big manufacturing base. We don't have big corporate America here in our backyard. So small companies can't afford insurance that maybe big companies can. Big companies will have employee assistance plans. They're called EAPs. Little companies usually don't buy that, but an EAP could be a big benefit to the employer and the employee, helping people get confidential assistance that they need. And maybe we as a business group can go and look for insurance at a bulk rate and have many smaller businesses participate in one plan that they can then offer to their employees at a rate that they can afford. So it's things like that, and looking at it through a business lens, looking at a problem maybe in a different way than a human service provider might. And that's really the skill and the expertise that we're trying to bring to the table and to the conversation.
Indeed, Wendy, and that's really, I think, an important facet is to be able to provide that support. It's true that the larger corporations do have, they have the money to be able to have those employee supports or insurance programs or the EIPs, which are fantastic. But as you said, the smaller businesses just can't afford that. So if the chamber can step in and perhaps, maybe not provide it, but provide a platform that can connect people with the services that they might need, that can make a huge difference for an employer and employees.
Exactly. And I think that the other side of it too is getting the story out about what's good about Cape Cod. Right now we're very, very focused on this really horrific story, and it's a very sad story, and it's not different from what's going on across the country. But we've been plucked out of the crate of eggs to be showcased. But the town of Yarmouth actually did a great job. Their police department recently released some statistics showing exactly what's going on in Yarmouth, and made the point that, listen, 98% of the people in Yarmouth are not addicted to opiates. 98% of the people are okay. And it's a small problem. It's a tragic problem because it doesn't usually have a good ending, because this stuff is so addictive, and it takes control of your brain, and it rewires your brain. So you have to intervene. You have to break a pattern, and it's really difficult. Even when someone wants to, it's very, very difficult to break that pattern. But the information is, there's a lot of good that's going on here too. So how do we, as a business organization, balance that? Hey, there's a good message as well as a sad message. Don't get so focused on, oh, it's all bad, because it's not all bad, but it's a hard problem, and it's going to take everyone working together to solve it. First, we have to understand it, and then we have to work at it. And in some cases, it's going to take a generation. We're going to have to get in the younger grades at school and make sure they understand that it's as uncool to do this as it is to smoke. So there's a whole lot of things that need to happen. Some things are going to happen quickly, and some things will take time. But we're here to be partners in that process.
Indeed, and to amplify the positive message. I think that's really important, is to, as you say, it's a very small portion of the population that is affected by this, and there are so many wonderful things that are going on here, so many positive opportunities for people. So to make that the loud message, I think is key. It's important, for everyone in our community, business owners and the like, to be able to amplify that positive message about Cape Cod, not just for our image across the world, but for our image right here at home.
Exactly. And I think, like your TV show and your news information is a part of that process. You can inform people, but be realistic and not be so doom and gloom that people just turn off or turn away. The danger is they just feel it's such a big problem they can't do anything and then can turn away. There's some good tools, and the county has been working with a lot of people, I think about 40 different entities across the Cape, but I know some people have criticized, we don't need a committee. Well, you know what? Sometimes committees are a good way to exchange information. Everyone comes, they learn, they go back to their sphere of influence, they get some things done, and we're working in coordination, and we're not reinventing wheels. So there is a really strong coordination effort going on now at the state level as well as at the local level. There's legislation that's moving through the State House this week, 3 different versions of strategies from the governor, the House, and the Senate. They'll be conferencing that to try to smooth out the differences and come out with a bill that's going to limit how much drugs doctors can prescribe, and it's going to determine the ability of a doctor to hold a patient until they're in a better place, in a safer place. So things are moving along, and even last night at the State of the Union address by the President, Representative Neal from Massachusetts, Congressman, brought our Attorney General to Washington to be in the Capitol building to hear the State of the Union address, and trying to highlight the opiate abuse issues in our country and in Massachusetts. So there's things happening at all levels of government, but sometimes government can't solve all our problems. Sometimes we as a community have to step up and do our piece. And that's what we're trying to do.
No doubt. Wendy, I thank you so much for joining us here on Barnstable this morning. A pleasure to have you on the show, and we'll check in with you again next month. Thank you again for joining us live.
Thank you, Sarah.
Have a great day.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Wendy Northcross is the CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce.